Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Once again, it is Tuesday. We'll be all day. And all of our guests today, including Brendan Morrison, standing by, brought to you by Al Chris Manson and the folks at the Whistler Golf Club. Brendan Morrison, former NHL center, former Canuck, member of the West Coast Express, 14 NHL seasons. Rick, acquired by the Canucks at the trade deadline March 14th, 2000. Brandon and Dennis Pettersson from New Jersey to Vancouver for Alex McGillney, and we thought we'd get Brendan on to talk about what it's like in the days leading up to an NHL trade deadline, which is the case this week, the deadline being Friday. Brendan, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Good. Very well. Do the days before an NHL trade deadline like this week bring back memories of 2000 for you?
It absolutely does. Yeah, it's a lot of memories, actually. It's funny how things kind of go down or transpire, and you hear all these different stories about how guys find out. So it's an interesting time of the year for sure.
So what was the anticipation like for you? Were you nervous? Did you get rumblings that you might be going to Vancouver? What was the case back then?
My situation was maybe a little bit unique with the Devils. I had gone in and talked to Lou Lamoriello earlier in the year about requesting a trade, and that didn't go over very well. I crawled out of that office, and to this day, when I think about that moment, I still get hot flashes of that interaction. Wow. But I had a contract dispute that summer. I ended up missing some training camp. I went over to the Czech Republic and played there for a month. Training camp was on. Anyways, I came back, signed, and asked for the trade. But so there were rumors that it could happen, but you never actually know if it's going to happen or not. But I was actually over in New York City with my fiance at the time, and my brother-in-law, who is Daryl Ray, Razor Ray, the color commentator of the Dallas Stars, and he was on the phone, the old flip phones back then, with a radio station out of Toronto, and they wanted his opinion on some trades that had transpired that day. So he was about to hang up the phone. They said, "Hold on, we have something coming across the wire right now." And they said, "Well, McGillney just got traded from Vancouver, and he's going to the Devils for Morrison and Pettersson." And my brother-in-law was like, "Really?" He's like, "Well, I'm having lunch with him right now. I'll let him know." So he hangs up the phone. He's like, "I think you just got traded."
Wow.
I'm like, "What?" I'm like, I hadn't heard anything, right? No news. It was silence. 5-10 minutes had gone by. And then I had a couple buddies from Vancouver message me and say, "Hey, listen, we just saw on the ticker that you've been traded." And I hadn't talked to the Devils yet, or Vancouver. I had no idea. So I ended up going back home to New Jersey. It was about 45 minutes from downtown New York, and I still hadn't heard. And as I'm pulling into my driveway, I get a phone call, and it's a secretary for Lou. And obviously I had a pretty good idea of what had happened, but finally patched me through. I spoke to Lou. He asked if I'd come down to the office to talk to him before I picked up my gear, and that's how I found out.
What the hell were you thinking going in at your early 20s asking Lou Lamoriello for a trade, Brendan? Wow.
Oh, man. I don't know. I look back at it. I think probably got a little impatient. We had a veteran team. I would play on the top power play unit, with Scott Niedermayer and Sikora, Elias, Arnott. And then I would play majority of the time on the fourth line. So and I saw other guys that I had played against or with in college, and I felt like, they were getting some better opportunities than I was at the time in New Jersey. But again, I probably was a little bit impatient, but for me, the deal worked out pretty good. I got to come back to my hometown, play with the Canucks on a time that we were really on the upswing. We had a lot of young guys that came back at the same time, and we had a lot of good years there in Vancouver.
Brendan, what happens when you get the call that you're traded? You got an agent, you got a family, you got to figure out where you're going to stay. Like, what goes through your mind, like, immediately after being told?
Well, it's a little bit of panic, right? A little bit of chaos, a lot of emotions. it really happened, it happened. Okay. Like Vancouver. So after I spoke to the Devils, I spoke to Brian Burke and they wanted to get me on it. So I found out the trade deadline's 3 o'clock Eastern time. I found out just before 4 o'clock Eastern.
Right.
They were trying to get me on a flight that night out to Vancouver. And I said, I can't do, like, I don't know if I can do this like that quickly. So they said, okay, we play tomorrow night at home against Buffalo. We'll get you out on a flight first thing in the morning and you can play tomorrow night. I'm like, okay, that works. That's fine. So at this particular time, I was with, again, my fiance. So we weren't married. We didn't have kids. But, when a guy gets traded to a new team, it's like you just go, you drop everything and go. I mean, and you assimilate into this new group. It's like you have, 22, 23 new brothers. They instantly take you in. Like you are integrated into the family right away. It's much more difficult, I think, on your spouse or your significant other or your kids, depending on the time of the year. Most guys at this time of year, if they have families, their families don't come because they're depending on the age of the kids, right? If the kids are in school, they usually stay behind, finish their school year, and then you have a long distance things going on. So there's a lot of different things that factor into it. But the first time for me, it was pretty plain and simple, cut and dry. And when the season ended, we ended up selling our condo and coming back, getting our furniture, and dealing with all that then.
Yeah, so many things to do. I want to get your thoughts on the current Canuck roster, Brendan. What's going on? They're in a playoff spot. Miller moved out. Pettersson stays. Besser might be moved out. What are your thoughts when you watch the Canucks play this season?
Well, I think inconsistency kind of sums it up, right? Like there's certain nights where they kind of look like the team that finished the year last year.
Yeah.
There's too many nights where they don't. And I know they've had some injury problems, and obviously they've had some, let's call it personality problems, to put it mildly, I guess. But injuries off the bat with Demko being out, but Lankinen's been a savior, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he came in and everybody thought Sheeloss was going to be the guy based on what he did last year in the playoffs. But I mean, Kevin Lankinen was a steal, right? What a find, and he's essentially kept them in this playoff hunt.
Yep.
It's a hard call, I think, for management. I mean, they're hanging on to that last spot. There's I'd say probably 4 teams that have a legitimate chance to grab that last spot. Them, Calgary. I know Utah's in there.
Yep. Anaheim even. Yeah.
I mean, they're sniffing, right? But I don't know. I mean, they need Quinn Hughes to be healthy, right? I think he was having a Norris type year before he was injured. If he's not healthy, I think they're in big trouble. But I think if they do get in, I think they're going to have their hands full. But again, with the parity in the league nowadays, if you get in, you have a chance. That's just the way it is. So they're going to grind and do everything they can to get in. But I think overall after last season, which was a bit of a surprise, I think to a lot of people, I think this season so far has been a little bit of a disappointment.
Yeah. Hey, Brendan, as a former successful NHL center, what advice would you give Elias Pettersson right now? I'm sure you, like all NHL players, went through some tough times.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's easier said than done. I mean, it's when you're in the moment and things aren't going well, it seems like everything you do just doesn't work, and it becomes more and more frustrating. And then you have outside advice, and then you're talked about every day, and I think it depends on your personality, really. Like, some guys it really affects adversely, right? Negatively. I think some guys can kind of roll with it and get through it. I remember, the year I scored the most goals that I had scored was 25 one year, and I had a 19-game goalless drought that year.
Really?
And it was like, I was just beside myself. And then I remember we actually were in Buffalo, and our team video assistant coach, Barry Smith, Smudge, he put together a pretty funny clip for all the boys about me not being able to score goals and all the chances I'd missed. And he kind of edited in this street hockey clip, and I ended up, kind of loosened the mood up, and we had a good laugh about it. And I ended up scoring that night. And then I think I scored 12 of my next 14 games. So it's funny how sometimes it just takes one moment or one thing to kind of ignite, something positive again. But I mean, the thing with Pettersson has been dragging on now almost since he signed that contract last year. So, this isn't a 1, 2, 3 months thing. It's been going on, but hopefully he can find his game, not only for himself personally, but obviously for the benefit of the team. I mean, the team needs him to get going.
Yeah.
Lou Lamoriello just texted our show. He said Brendan Morrison was excellent. There you go. Things have changed, Brendan.
Man. Well, that's good to know because, oh man, I thought last time I saw him, there was smoke coming out of his ears.
Brendan, thanks for this. This has been great. Appreciate it.
Anytime, boys. Yeah, you guys do a great job. Always happy to connect.
I'll ask you one more question. I think we asked you last time you were on, but what are you up to these days?
Yeah, I'm still chasing kids around a little bit. I got 3 kids at university, a boy playing hockey, 2 girls playing soccer. I got one daughter who's in grade 11 who's trying to play college hockey. My fishing show is going full swing, Real West Coast. That's been awesome. Doing some commercial real estate with the group out of Vancouver, the Strongwind Group. So, yes, staying busy. And my big thing right now is I've been working on a clothing line the last 3 years. That's kind of tie in outdoor apparel, kind of fishing and boating, and so that's been a work in progress. But I think we'll be able to launch this fall. So lots of action.
Nice.
Rick could use some gum boots, rubber boots.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah, we'll put that on the list.
Donnie and Dolly shirts, Brendan. Donnie and Dolly shirts. Come on.
Nice.
We'll swap with the shirts you have for your show. Brendan, thanks for this. Appreciate it.
Okay, boys. Have a great day.
You bet.